Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So please do forgive my voice, I'm not feeling well. So in today's video we are doing utility and demand, right? And I just have a few announcements to make. We'll be hosting our test 2 economics bootcamp on the 18th and on the 19th of 2020 of May. The first one is a content bootcamp, right? So we'll be revising content, and then the second one will be doing past papers. Each of these boot camps cost 280 rands. So you can choose whichever one you want to attend depending on your budgets and depending on your needs, right? So you can just send me a WhatsApp message if you are interested in joining. I did release a post and it's on the group chats. So yeah, let's get right into today's content. So as I said, we are doing utility and demand, right? So I just want to take you guys back to what we said economics is, right? And when we started with economics, we defined economics as a social science, right? So meaning it's studying people, it's studying individuals, studying the society. And it is a social science that studies the choices that individuals, but I like to call them economic participants, make when faced with scarcity. So this very definition of what economics is the basis of everything that you're going to study or everything you have studied in economics, right? And the reason why I want to just remind you guys of this definition is so that you guys understand why we are studying the topics that we are studying, right? And this topic that we are focusing on today is utility and demand, right? But before we get that, let's just go back to this definition. This definition is talking about choices, right? That participants, and these participants are individuals, right? These are households, governments, etc. But they are individuals. So it's studying the choices that the individuals are making, all right? So these choices are based on what individuals prefer, right? So the choice that you make is based on whatever it is that you prefer, right? And to understand or to make a conclusion on what someone prefers, you look at the satisfaction that they get from consuming that good. So to understand what you prefer as a person, you look at the amount of satisfaction that you get when you consume a certain good, and then you decide that this is the good that I prefer over the other one. And most probably the one that gives you the most satisfaction when consumed is the one that you will prefer more, right? So we are saying that you are going to choose your preference based on the satisfaction that you get from the consumption of that good. And in economics, we call that satisfaction utility. All right. So now that we are talking about utility, let's make a distinction between what total utility is and what marginal utility is, right? So total utility is the total satisfaction that you're going to get when you consume, when you move from one consumption to another, right? So it increases the more you consume. If I'm eating a good that I like, for instance, let's say I buy ice cream, right? Because I love ice cream, I want to consume as much ice cream as I can. So my total utility is going to increase, right? However, my marginal utility shows the change in my increase in the total utility. So as total utility increases, there's going to be a change, right? And that change is called marginal utility. And if you guys remember from computational maths, marginals shows us the rate of change of the original function. So here we have a total utility function, which is the original function, and a marginal utility function, which is a rate of change of the original function. So as you're answering, do not forget that the courses that you are doing, are interlinked. So they can give you a marginal function and they ask you about the total function. So don't forget how to differentiate and integrate, right? Because they brought this last year and I forgot that the courses are interlinked, and I was like, how am I supposed to do it in an economic way? But you can actually use the mathematical way of integrating and differentiation and differentiating in order to get to either of the two, right? I just want to illustrate this concepts of total utility and marginal utility using an example, right? So to simplify things, obviously you have preferences. To simplify things, if you think about scarcity, we are saying you have unlimited needs and wants, but limited resources. So in terms of the unlimited needs and wants, we are going to limit it to two goods that you prefer, right? In order to be able to draw graphs and, make economic conclusions. So we are going to say that you prefer two goods, and those two goods that you prefer are chocolate, right? Why am I writing that? Okay, this is the first good that you prefer, chocolate, and the second good that you prefer is cold drink, right? And the units that you're going to be consuming are moving from 0 to 5. And for cold drink, they're moving from 0 to 5 as well. And we are going to measure the total utility that you are going to get as you consume chocolate, right? So when you're consuming 0 units, the total satisfaction that you get is 0. All right, and then these are just made up values. When you consume 1 unit, the total satisfaction that you get is 50. When you consume 2, and it goes on and on, right? So if you check, the total utility is moving from 1, right, on the first point, to 50, to 90, to 22, to 122, to 150, to 176. So total utility increases the more units you consume. But let's see what then happens to marginal utility. And we said marginal utility is the change in the increases, is the change that I get as my total utility increases. But I want to know, how then is it increasing, right? Is it increasing at a decreasing rate, or is it increasing at an increasing rate? If you think back to computational maths, marginal tells us the rates of change of our original function. So we have our total utility, and the marginal utility is telling me how the total utility is changing, right? I know the total utility is increasing the more I consume. But what happens then to my marginal utility, right? How is the total utility increasing? Is it at a decreasing rate, or is it at an increasing rate? So we then calculate marginal utility. So for the first point, you're just going to have 0. For the next one, 50 minus 0, we get 50, right? 90, I'm very bad with mental math, so forgive me. 90 minus 50 gives me 40, all right? 122 minus 90 gives me 32. 150 minus 122 gives me 28. 176 minus 150 gives me 26, right? So if you analyze the answers that we got for marginal utility, you will notice that I'm moving from 0 to 50 to 40 to 32 to 26 to 28 to 26. So that means as my total utility increases, my marginal utility decreases, right? So we are saying the increase change in my total utility is at a decreasing rate. It first increased by 50. It moved from 0 to 50, but after that increase, it now moved from 50 to 40. The change in my increase moved from 40 to 32. The change in my increase in total utility now moved from 32 to 28, right? So what this illustrates is a law that we look at in economics, and that law is called the diminishing marginal returns. And what this law tells us is that the more you consume, right, the lesser the benefit you get from that consumption, right? And that's what this law is about, and it's illustrated really in this example, right? So remember, we said that we are simplifying things, and we are saying you're just focusing on the consumption of two goods. We talked about chocolates. Now we're talking about cold drink. You do the same calculation just to emphasize how it's done. I'm just going to calculate the marginal utility for cold drink as well. It's going to be 0. 75 minus 0, I have 75. 123 minus 75, I have 48. 159 minus 123, I have 36. 183 minus 159, I have 24. And then 205 minus 183, I have 22. All right. Okay. And as you can see, still my marginal utility is decreasing as my total utility is increasing. So to be able to conclude, you'd say total utility is increasing, right, as we are seeing here, but at a decreasing rate. Right? Okay, that is utility. But before we move on to the next thing, I just want to show you the graphs of both this utility that I'm talking about, right? The total utility as well as the marginal utility graph. So we said total utility increases, right? So total utility is increasing, so the graph needs to be increasing, right? And as you can see it from here, marginal utility on the other hand, is decreasing, so you need to see a decreasing graph, right? So that's how you draw the two graphs. And diminishing marginal utility. And as I was saying, that marginal utility is the slope of our total utility curve, and it's telling us how the total utility is increasing. And we have concluded that the total utility increases at a decreasing rate, right? And that was total utility for you. And then if we just go back to the definition of what economics is, right? We talked about another thing. We talked about scarcity. So you are making choices, but you are limited because there is scarcity, right? And when we talk about individuals and the consumptions that they are making, the scarcity that they face is the constraint in their income. So you are going to earn a certain income, and as much as you'd love to buy a car, as much as you'd love to buy a house, you have a fixed income, right? And like that just showcases scarcity. You have unlimited needs and wants, but very limited resources, and your resources, the limited resources in this case, is your income, right? So we are saying you want to make consumption choices, right? But you are limited by your income. So we're illustrating two things here: the preferences that you have, hence we talked about utility, but now we are including the constraints that you have to buying the goods that you prefer, right? And we are saying the budget constraint that you have in this case is income, right? So we have what we call a budget line here, and it just shows you the combination of goods that you can buy given your income. So you have three things here. You have, let's say 4 things. You have your Y, capital letter Y, which is your income, so whatever amount you are earning. And then you have the price of good 1, the price of good 2, as well as the quantities. So the quantities will be shown here. So for cold drink, the quantities will be here. And then for chocolates, the quantities will be here, right? So you have 4 things here. Y, the income. You have the price of chocolates, you have the price of cold drink, and the units of each. And the units will be shown on each axis. So I have chocolate here, so the units will be under the x-axis. The units for cold drink, on the other hand, will be on the y-axis, right? So we are saying that your income is 40 rands, right? And you can have different combinations. The first one is A, and I am consuming 0 chocolates. So meaning, remember, my budget is 40. So whatever combination I'm consuming needs to be limited to 40. So you have 0, the quantity, times the price of chocolate. The price of chocolate is 4, all right, plus 10. Sorry, the price of chocolate is actually 8. Plus the price of cold drink, which we are consuming 10 units of, and the price of cold drink is 4, right? And if you add these, you'll see that it gives you 40 rand. So a budget constraint is a line, a linear line that shows you the combination of quantities of both the goods you prefer that you will be able to buy given your income. So it's a budget constraint function, right? It tells you what your consumption is constrained to given your preferences, given the prices, right? So if you check all these points, which is just an exercise you can do for yourself, you will see that it's limited to 40 rand. So whatever combination you're having is actually going to be 40 rand, right? So let's just call this budget constraint a budget constraint of Busi, and this is what Busi can buy given her income of 40 rand, right? So we've talked about total utility. So we've talked about 2 things, right? Your preferences, so the goods that you can buy, and your budget constraint, right? And if you check on your budget constraint, you have different points. You have point A, point B, point C, point D, point E. But which point should then Busi choose, right? And to know which point or combination a consumer should choose, you look at the point that maximizes your utility, right? And there are 2 ways you can do this. You can look at the point where total utility is maximized, right? And this point is actually called my consumer equilibrium. So let's say point A, B, C, D, E, right? And let's say you have your units, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, and let's say total utility is 0, 50, 90. So you'll be given these values. You just need to be able to do this calculation. 150, 176, right? And then for, let's say this was for chocolate, and then for cold drink, on the other hand, you have total utility of 260, 248. I feel like this is wasting so much time. 225, excuse me guys, 183, 123. Okay, I wrote this wrong. Oh god. Okay. Now I have to edit the video. Editing takes so much time though, because I am wasting time. Let's see, 260, 248, 225, 183, 123, and 0. All right, and we said that this is for cold drink. So the units for cold drink, okay, sorry about that guys. So I don't think I'll edit, just just like move right so on the parts where I was like quiet. So we want to choose the best combination, right? And if you remember, we said you could have different combinations from a budget line. You could have A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? So those are the points that we are talking about. And sorry, if we just go back to this, right, you guys can see that I'm consuming different combinations of cold drink and chocolates. For A, 0.10, for B, 1.8, for C, 2.6, for this one, 3, 4, etc. Right? So you write that and you look at the total utility that you get from each consumption. So you are given your total utility values for chocolate, total utility values for cold drink, right? And to be able to choose the best point in all these points, what you do is you calculate the total utility for both, right? So you will take for A, 0 plus 260, you get the 260. 50 plus 248, you get the 298. You do the same for all of them, and these are the answers that you should get. And if you check on the total utility, the highest total utility for both is the point where you maximize your utility. So meaning you should produce 2 chocolates and 6 cold drinks. So the point where you maximize utility, the first way to calculate it is to do this table, and then you calculate the total utility for both goods, and then you find the one with the highest total utility, right, for both goods. And the second way that you can do this, I'm so sorry guys, the second way that you can do this, so that was the first one, and that is called consumer equilibrium, as I said. And then the second way that you can do this is by calculating your marginal utility per rand of each unit of each good, sorry. So you calculate your marginal utility per rand of chocolates, marginal utility per rand of cold drink, right? And you find the point where both of these are equated. And so you first, like, you do your total utility, marginal utility per rand. With the marginal utility per rand, you take the marginal utility at that point, divide by the price, right? So for each point. And then it's on a table, right? So meaning you need to open it, you need to draw a table. And then you circle the parts where your marginal utility per rand of cold drink equals the marginal utility per rand of chocolates. Doesn't have to be on the same line item. After you have done that, on those points, you look for the point that maximizes your income. So you take the units at each point, the units of chocolate multiplied by its price plus the units of cold drink times the price, and see if it maximizes your income, right? And then you take the point that is both where they are equated and where it maximizes income. And that is the best point that you should choose, right? We talked about the point where they are equated, but I just want you guys to understand the points where they are not equated, and they love being in this question. So where the marginal utility for cold drink per rand is less, right? So let's just use let's use a highlighter. Where the marginal utility for cold drink per rand is less than the marginal utility for chocolates per rand, what does that mean, right? So I don't want you to cram this. I want you to think about it. We said if you consume the good a lot, you value it less, right? So meaning that the more you consume, right? So meaning that if we look at the first one, this one, it is saying that the marginal utility of cold drink per rand is less than the marginal utility of chocolates, right? If your marginal utility, meaning the additional satisfaction you are getting, is less, what does that mean? It means you are consuming more of that good. That's why you are valuing it less. So if your marginal utility is less than the other good, it means you are consuming more of this good and less of this good, right? The more your marginal utility is, the less of that good you are consuming, because the more of a good you consume, the less you value that good, right? And when you value that good less, your marginal utility is going to be less. So I hope it makes sense. So this means, so when the marginal utility of cold drink is less than the marginal utility of chocolates, it means that I'm consuming more of cold drink and less of chocolates. And to fix this, you should reduce your consumption of cold drink and increase your consumption of chocolates, right? And if we go to the second one, it says the marginal utility of cold drink per rand is now greater. When it's greater, it means you are consuming that good less because you are valuing it more. If you think of the paradox of value, right, which I will not cover, but like it's in your textbook, people value, right, diamonds more, right? People value diamonds more. And why is that? It's because they are receiving less of diamonds. Diamonds are expensive. They are receiving less of diamonds. Hence, they are valuing them more. When you are valuing something more, its marginal utility will be more, right? So we are saying if the marginal utility of cold drinks is more than the marginal utility of chocolates, you are valuing chocolates more because you are consuming less of chocolates and more of cold drinks. It means yes. I thought I said that wrong. Yes. So you are consuming more of chocolates, right? Because its marginal utility is less, right? So you're consuming more of that thing. You are valuing it less, right? And you're consuming more of the other, less of the other, right? So what should you do? You should reduce the consumption of chocolates and increase the consumption of cold drink. So what you have to ask yourself is, what is marginal utility? It's telling me how the additional value that I put to something. So what decides the value you put? How accessible is that thing to you? If something is scarce, you put more value to it. If something is not scarce, right? If you think of water, it's not scarce, right? So you don't put that much value to it because you can easily get it. But if there was a drought, water would be something that is hard to get, hence you value it more. So you ask yourself, if you value that thing more, right, what does it mean? It means you are consuming less of that thing, meaning its marginal utility is gonna be more, right? So yeah. And then if you were to go back to where they are equated and you just rewrite this, so just rearrange. You want the prices to be on their own side, the marginal utilities to be on their own side. And on the price part, after you have rearranged, that gives us the opportunity cost of cold drinks. So you're saying one cold drink costs this much chocolates, right? Therefore, the opportunity cost of cold drink is chocolate, and its value would be this, right? Okay. And then we look at two effects, right? The substitution effects and the income effects. And you guys should know this from demand, right? If you look at the substitution effects, right? Let's just go back to the pen. If we look at chocolates, if the price of chocolate has to reduce, right? So if the price of chocolates reduced, right, what would happen to the quantity of chocolate, quantity demanded of chocolates? It would increase, right? So it would move from A to B because of the law of demand. But what would happen to the substitute of chocolates if the price increases? If the price reduces, if the price of chocolate reduces, the quantity of chocolate increases, quantity demanded of chocolate increases. but the substitutes demand curve is gonna be reduced, right? And that is a substitution effect. If you think about it, if the price of chocolate increased, what would happen to the demand of cold drink? It would increase, right? That's just how substitutes work. Here we are looking at the change in price of a certain good and looking at how its quantity demanded is changing, as well as how that price change is now affecting its substitutes, right? And then the income effect. So an increase in income, what would an increase in income allow us to do? An increase in income would allow us to produce more of both goods. So both chocolates and cold drink would increase. I'm sorry about the mistakes that I kept on making. Yeah, this brings us to the end of today's video, guys. It's probably because I'm not feeling well and I'm a bit weak. But yeah, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you click that subscribe button and attend our boot camps, because I will be resending videos that are of content that I already did last year. This is the only video that I'll be posting this semester, a new video, right? I do have a video on the budget line, the income and substitution effects in terms of the graphs, right? And the cost curves. I do have videos on that already, so I'll just be resharing the videos. Thank you so much, guys.